Have you been in contact with the other side? Or has a spirit ever reached out to talk to you? Today, we'll be looking at people who have been in contact with the dead. From phone calls from the deceased to scary messages from Ouija boards. Let's talk about this and more only in today's video. Starting off this countdown, we have the static. There's a lot of stories out there about dead people calling their loved ones. It's freaky how many people have experienced this, just like this next person. So their aunt passed away from a number of health complications. A couple days later at around 7 a.m., her grandma, which was her aunt's mother, got a phone call. The caller ID said that it was their aunt calling. What was weird is that she normally called around 7 a.m. every day. But now since she was dead, they were pretty confused. But they answered the phone and all they heard was static. They believed that it was the aunt trying to get in contact with her mom again. Moving on at number 9, we have Pennies from Heaven. Have you ever heard of the term pennies from heaven? And I'm not talking about the song and movie. Well, some use this phrase to refer to ghosts using coins to communicate with you. Maybe you wake up and find a penny on the ground by your desk and you're like, that's weird, how did that get there? Well, it might have been placed there by a spirit trying to get in contact with you. But why pennies? Well, the copper in which pennies are made up of are considered a conductor for electromagnetic fields, which are said to be emitted by spirits. So it's easy for them to manipulate pennies. A number of people have reported finding random pennies around their house after the passing of a loved one. This could be a sign that they are still there with you and are reaching out. Too bad here in Canada, they discontinued pennies, so whoops. In our 8th spot, we have the doctor. According to this woman named Lauren C., her grandmother was a pediatrician from Puerto Rico, so a lot of people just called her La Doctora. When she passed away a few years ago, she believed that her grandmother reached out and left a note for her and her mom. So they were staying at a hotel when they found a note left on their dresser. The note read, "Contactos con los muertos." I'm so sorry, I know I butchered this, but it means contact with the dead, and it was signed La Doctora. How wild is that? They believed that this was from their grandmother, letting them know that she's still around. In our 7th spot, we have the EVP. EVPs are devices that ghost hunters use to get in contact with spirits. It's like a voice box for the spirit so that they can manipulate this device and use it to form words. Well, a woman named Kimberly H. decided to use one a week after her uncle died. The first thing that the spirit said was John, which is her dad's name. Then it got weirder because the second thing it said was brother. So she believes that she was talking to her uncle who was trying to get in contact with his brother John, aka her dad. Unfortunately, Kimberly was too scared to continue on with the EVP device, so she never got to find out what his message to his brother was. In our 6th spot today, we have Sorry. This story was posted by Absolutely Insane Geek on Reddit. According to him, when his dad was about 15 years old, he decided to use an Ouija board with his friends. As they were calling on a spirit, they actually got in contact with one, and it used the board to spell out the dad's name. The next thing it spelled out was sorry. The spirit was apologizing to the dad because his favorite uncle had recently passed away. In fact, it might have been the uncle himself reaching out to him. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Help Me. This next story comes from Juby Love. So one day she was calling her mom when the call got picked up and all she heard was static. She said hello multiple times, but there was nothing. Then that's when she heard someone whisper on the other end of the line. She listened in carefully and she heard a woman whispering, help me, repeatedly. Now she freaked out thinking that her mom was in trouble. The call ended, but she kept calling back. A few calls later, her mom answered. She claims that she never got the call until now since she was out of service. So who was the woman on the other line that answered the phone and needed help? In our 4th spot today, we have the grandmother's warning. When Christian's family went out of town for spring break and left him alone, he thought, hey, what better time than to use an Ouija board? So he was in his kitchen using the board by himself when all of a sudden the kitchen sink turned on. When he asked who it was that did that, the board spelt out Renee, which was his great-grandmother's name. Then for some reason, the planchette kept moving to the numbers 3 and 4. Well, his great-grandmother was 34 when she passed away. When he told his mom what happened, she freaked out. Apparently, Renee hated Ouija boards and she was very, very against them. So she thinks that Renee was using the board to warn her family to stop using it. Even with her being dead, she still found a way to scold her family. In our 3rd spot today, we have the party phantom. So this next individual, Jess Gals, shared a story on behalf of her friend. Her friend had just moved into a new house and decided to throw a party. While at the party, she had a little too much to drink and ended up leaving some drunken voicemails for her friends. The next day, they all were having a hoot listening to her drunk messages, until they heard something very scary at the back of one. In one of the voicemails, they heard this very scary, aggressive voice yell, "Vivian." A couple of days later, they were talking to their neighbors and found out that the previous tenant of their house was a lady named Vivian. She had died in that house. See, that's why you do your research on the house before you buy it and move into it. You gotta make sure no people die in the house and that it's not haunted. In our second spot, we have the poem. Now this story is absolutely wild. It was shared by Reddit user Kazurli on behalf of her mom. According to the Reddit user, her mom was very close to her grandmother. Just before she passed away, her gran bought her a book full of poems. When she did pass, she randomly found the book sitting open in plain sight. The book was open to a page called "Do Not Weep at My Grave." From then on, her mom would read her that story every night for months on end until they both felt better about the grandma's passing. Fast forward to several years later, her mom found the poem book and decided to revisit that passage. However, it was no longer in the book. She flipped through it madly, but the poem called "Do Not Weep at My Grave" was not there. In fact, it wasn't even in the table of contents. It was never in the book at all. So they both think that this was a sign from her gran as a way to help them deal with their grief. And in our number one spot today, we have Pat. While in college, Mary Kay and her sorority sisters decided to play with an Ouija board one night. To make things spookier, they took a board to the oldest frat house on campus. At first, they were all fooling around with the board, and that was until it kept spelling out Pat, 18, Keg, and NU, which made no sense to any of them. They just thought that one of the sisters was fooling around and moving the planchette. That was until later on when they found out that the house that they were in once was named Sigma NU. But it was shut down in the 80s because an 18-year-old freshman named Pat died from alcohol poisoning during a kegger. Remember what the board spelt out? Pat, 18, Keg, NU. That story just gave me chills all over. Man. All right, let's move on to our comment shout out portion. But before that, comment something down below, something freaky. Like I said, did a spirit ever reach out to you? Let me know. I'll be shouting out comments from the video, Top 10 Bizarre Glitches in the Matrix You Weren't Meant to See Part 2. Lee Duran commented, I don't normally comment on anything, but I did have this one time where I went to go visit my street pharmacist and handed him a $20 bill, which is all I had at the time. Received my goods and left. Well, when I got back home, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. Wow, someone's looking after you. Somebody slipped that $20 back into your pocket. Maybe it was the pharmacist. Maybe he's like, this person's broke. We shouldn't be taking their money. Here, take it back. I wish I could randomly just find money all over the place. Man. All right, guys, that's all the comments I'm shouting out for today's video. Make sure to comment something down below for a chance to be featured in my next comment shout out. And as always, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to Most Amazing Top 10 for more amazing videos. I've been your host, Lindsay Ivan, and I'll see ya when I see ya.